Protests resume once again in Hong Kong, with the city coming to a standstill as flights and trains are cancelled, with authorities calling for calm. Mexico is considering taking legal action against the United States, with at least 6 Mexican nationals among the dead following Saturday's mass shooting in El Paso, the second in just 24 hours. US President Donald Trump weighs in on the spate of mass shootings, but is being slammed for failure to control guns in the country.
We have to get it stopped. This has been going on for years and years in our country. We have to get it stopped.
And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is alleging that he's unearthed a plot to unseat him by a number of right-wing figures, forcing members of his Likud party to sign loyalty agreements. I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for joining me. We begin in the United States, where in less than 24 hours, at least 29 people have been shot dead and more than 50 others wounded after 2 mass shootings, the first in El Paso, Texas, when a gunman opened fire in a shopping area at a Walmart store where many people were out ahead of the school term buying supplies, with the gunman, a 21-year-old white male from Dallas, arrested. Now, just 13 hours later, another mass shooting, this time in Ohio, in an area packed with bars and clubs, where police say 24-year-old Connor Betts opened fire wearing protective armour, shooting dead 9 others, including his sister. I-24 News correspondent Andy Rosgin in El Paso, where people are searching for answers.
Michael Brooks spent the day after El Paso's worst ever mass shooting pleading with authorities for help finding his adult son.
My son had Facebook my niece yesterday. Said he had been shot. He was at Walmart, been shot when the shooting happened. My niece went to ask him again. The phone hung up. Then came up here. They won't give me no information. I'm going to all the hospitals. I just don't want the bad news.
We never heard back from Michael, but he headed here to a school which had been used as a place for reunifying separated families and is now a place for open grieving.
Trying to digest it, trying to take it in, and they have survivor's guilt. You know, survivor's guilt sucks.
And like Michael Brooks, all of El Paso is searching for answers. Shooting survivor Kendall Long also pleaded with authorities to get his wife's truck back, a truck she needs for work, from the locked down Walmart. The memories of what the couple went through won't soon go away.
They were shouting, "Run, there's a shooter, he's shooting," and they were running inside the building.
But the city is also trying to move forward. People lined up on Sunday to give blood for the shooting victims in the hospital. This location saw hundreds of donors who waited for hours on a scorching day to give blood. Folks even turned up to give the donors free food.
Just to do my part in the community and give back to the victims and their families, you know, just to do my little part.
And with nothing else to do, a lot of folks just started dropping off flowers at the Walmart. And Gabriel Gonzalez hopped into a truck, proudly showing the flags of America and Mexico, and started doling out water.
I still feel in shock. Like, I really don't think that this happened here, but I mean, it did. So we're just trying to help out.
And their thoughts on the shooter? He's someone to pity, to forget about, who failed to break them.
He just has hatred that's fueled off of really nothing. He doesn't know how these people are here.
There's a bunch of Hispanics that are gonna stay here. Might as well get used to it.
Andy Rosgen, I-24 News, El Paso, Texas.
And for more, I'm joined on Skype by Hal Kemper, who's a retired Marine Corps intelligence officer, speaking from Los Angeles. Hal, thanks so much for coming on. We heard Donald Trump praise the quick work of law enforcement officials, less than a minute, he says, in Ohio. So we're talking about weapons here, though, that can kill 9 people in less than a minute. Tell me, can we expect to see any reform on weapons like this? What is the point of someone having a weapon such as this?
Sarah, the weapons that they have are basically military-grade weapons. They're not fully automatic. In other words, they're not like machine guns. But if someone knows how to shoot them, you can shoot very quickly. It's just you have to squeeze the trigger every single time. Of course, in Las Vegas, he actually had a bump stock. So every time he fired a round, it would fire another round, which gave the simulated automatic weapons fire. There's been a lot of discussion, as you know, do private individuals need to own and use weapons like this? There really isn't a sports use, hunting or something like that, use of these weapons because, well, frankly, they're not designed for that. I know some people in certain states do actually go out there and hunt things like coyotes and things with these weapons, but they're not really designed for that. And we did have an assault weapons ban at one time in the United States. That's probably going to come back again for discussion because they can kill a lot of people. And frankly, the capability of the weapon itself is part of the reason you see these mass casualties.
And Hal, it is quite rare that in the case of, say, Texas, the shooter was caught alive. Tell me, what more can this do for law enforcement? Do you think it can really help with understanding these type of cases further?
I think this is we're very fortunate to actually catch him alive. We're going to be able to question him. We're going to find out how he was communicating with others online, which could be through a variety of means, could be through forums, could be through various posts, could be through online gaming. That's a phenomenon we've seen that's cropped up a lot in the last 10 years. These things where they play these very violent games where they go around shooting people, basically, which very closely simulates an actual active shooter incident, if you will. And they're talking to people online at the same time. Well, you get people who are interested in the same thing like that. They're basically working in collusion, conducting mass violence, albeit usually in the auspices of killing zombies or simulating actual warfare. But you get the adrenaline flowing, people start talking, and eventually they will start to triage the conversation to find like-minded individuals that might have the same, violent extremist thoughts that they have.
And Hal, tell me, this is just the fourth shooting we've seen in 1 week, including California and Mississippi. And often in mass shootings, we see this trend of the shooters releasing manifestos, in this case in El Paso. Tell me, what do you make of that trend?
That's not a new trend. That's been around for a very long time. In fact, it's a very common trend we've seen with domestic extremists, albeit with that said, with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they will do, when they do their martyrdom, their suicide operations, if you will, they will often film a videotape, which is kind of the same thing, where they express why they're doing this. Well, we've seen the online thing where they will post these domestic terrorists, especially those who are white supremacist, xenophobic or whatever, will often post little manifestos online. The question is, do we have the resources to pick up on this fast enough? Because usually they'll post it right before they do the attack. I think theoretically it's possible that we could pick up on that, but we certainly don't have the manpower to go through and look at all these online postings to find this, because there's just too close of a loop between when they post it and when they actually do the attacks, but that is an indicator.
Hal Kemper there in LA, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. A 5.2 magnitude earthquake has rocked the southwest part of Iran in an area around 338 miles southwest of the capital, Tehran, just after midnight local time. So far, there's been no reports of casualties in the province of Boya Ahmad, which is home to around 15,000 people. Now, just 10 minutes after the initial quake, another one hit, this time an aftershock, which registered at 3.5 on the Richter scale. Iran is located on major seismic faults and experiences, on average, around 1 earthquake per day. And we're going out for a short break, but when we come back, we'll bring you the latest on the massive protests in Hong Kong as demonstrators take to the streets again, while authorities are condemning protesters, promising to clamp down. All of that and plenty more when we come back. Stay with us.
Michael, what happened to TV news?
Hell of a first question. You're trying to shoot the stand-up, and the guy comes behind you, and he's yelling Baba Booey.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, or worse than that.
Steve, did you kill Elvis?
The world thought I was Jack the Ripper.
From the deeply personal to the universally shared, from the local story to the global picture, from the politics shaping our world to the people most affected by them. High Definition will take you on a journey that will spark your curiosity and speak to your heart, combining in-depth interviews, original reporting, and riveting storytelling with the fascinating world of documentaries.
Politics, economics, business, and technology. Get the real news and the real insight about what's happening around the world. Michelle McCory breaks down the top stories of the day from the Middle East to the U.S. Weeknights beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Whether you're just getting out of bed or starting your day, or you're already hard at work, we cut through the clutter to give you the right dose. Breaking news and top headlines from Israel, the Middle East, and around the world. Politics, pop culture, sports, and music. We track the big stories from the heart of the Middle East. Brace yourself for your daily dose of news.
Welcome back. Absolute chaos is descending on Hong Kong as demonstrators there are once again taking to the streets with roads blocked and flights cancelled as a citywide strike paralyses Hong Kong. The protests have been ongoing now for more than 9 weeks originally, beginning over a controversial extradition bill, but since then the growing unrest is over a number of wider issues. Erica Jackson has more.
Havoc in Hong Kong with protesters disrupting subway and rail lines. And nearly half of the flights arriving in or leaving Hong Kong canceled as the city on strike. Hong Kong's chief executive speaking out on the matter, saying the area is in a dangerous situation and calling for calm.
The great majority of Hong Kong people are now in a state of great anxiety. Some of them do not know whether they could still take some forms of public transport, while others are right now being blocked on the way to work. The government will be resolute in maintaining law and order.
This, the 9th week of protests in a row, with demonstrations sometimes turning violent, with police officers firing tear gas and protesters throwing objects. Demonstrations began in early June over the proposed extradition bill that would have let residents be extradited to stand trial in mainland China. That bill has now been suspended, but protests have evolved, with many taking to the streets, calling for more democracy and police accountability.
And for more, I'm joined here in the studio by our international affairs correspondent, Bianca Zanini. Bianca, thank you. Tell me first, these started as protests, which then turned violent. Now we're seeing striking action. Can we expect this to be more effective than what we've seen so far?
Well, the fact that we are seeing strikes now, and they are so big and they're hitting airports and the subway system, more than 200 flights canceled, a third of the flight controllers joining in on the strike, that does have an effect. And another tactic that the protesters are using is that they're defining themselves as having to be like water. So they gather very quickly in a spot and then they disperse very quickly and gather very quickly in another spot and disperse. So this is a tactic that they're using to try to make the whole city essentially a little bit more unsafe, because they don't know where the protests or when they will blow up. Now, there's no doubt that this is affecting the economy clearly. clearly. We've heard Carrie Lam talk about this. We're seeing the stock market taking a plunge this morning. But at the end of the day, whether or not it will be more effective is a very open question, because Carrie Lam, the chief executive, is pointing the finger and it's blaming the protesters for this. So I'm not sure that that's going to change anything.
And Bianca, we really did see these protests begin quite calmly, but since then there really has been a rise in violence. Tell me, how is the government addressing that?
So essentially the protesters are saying that the government is not listening to them. The face of the government right now, the face of the authorities, is the police. And the police is being criticized for cracking down very harshly, for being very violent against the protesters. And Carrie Lam did today say that she's going to institute a daily presser from the police to the people. But at the end of the day, it's unlikely to be enough to appease the protesters. She didn't say anything new. She called for calm and blamed the protester, blamed them for the violence, calling for the citizens to come together, but not really addressing any of the issues that they're calling for. And that's one of the main problems in this whole situation, is that what they're calling for is not something that the government in Hong Kong or in China is willing to give them.
So what about China? How likely is it that we'll see Beijing get involved?
Well, they have been hinting at possibly military intervention. Every day that we see these protests grow bigger and larger, the likelihood of China intervening grows bigger as well. But at the end of the day, Sarah, if China decides to break this one country, two system policy and intervene militarily in Hong Kong, it will be the end of Hong Kong as we know it, and that's not something that the Chinese are willing to risk right now.
Certainly. All right, Bianca Zanini, thanks so much for that. Now to Israeli politics, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is famously suspicious of anyone in his Likud party who grows too popular or potentially threatens his reign, both in the short and long term. Now, with Netanyahu vulnerable on a number of fronts, those suspicions are out in the open. And as I24 News diplomatic correspondent Mike Wagenheim reports, the Premier's supporters have gone so far as to demand a loyalty commitment to Netanyahu from everyone in writing.
Paranoid, desperate, or hedging his bets? After political rival Avigdor Lieberman suggested on Saturday that the ruling Likud party has alternatives to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the long-standing premier wasted little time. His supporters demanded a written commitment from all Likud parliamentary candidates that they will back Netanyahu and only Netanyahu to lead the next government. And the top 40 candidates all agreed to it.
No, I'm not surprised. You know, in Likud's constitution, there is a very clear paragraph that only a person who can serve as prime minister on behalf of Likud is chairman of the party. We are also not like Meretz or a Labour Party that we change leaders like socks.
Lieberman is Netanyahu's former protege, but his resignation as defense minister in November hastened the collapse of Netanyahu's government, and his refusal to budge on his pet piece of legislation helped kill negotiations and the formation of a new government after April's elections. Lieberman now says he'll only sit in a unity government with Likud and the center-left Blue and White Party and his Yisrael Beitenu party, and according to the polls, he has the power to make it happen. But Blue and White says they won't sit with Netanyahu, and rather than risk a third election, Lieberman says Likud needs to get ready quickly for the post-Netanyahu era, floating Parliament Speaker Yuli Edelstein as a candidate and quickly drawing the ire of Netanyahu's son Yair, who claimed he smelled a coup, then later deleted the tweet.
Realistically speaking, in this term, the Likud party, which official name, by the way, is Likud, headed by Benjamin Netanyahu, it's totally impossible and unthinkable that we will tell the people to vote for Likud, headed by Benjamin Netanyahu, and many people practically also vote for Benjamin Netanyahu, and then we come and say, okay, we have some hardships.
The big question now, if the moment of truth arrives, how many Likud parliamentarians will stick to their commitment to Netanyahu? and only Netanyahu.
And for more, our diplomatic correspondent Mike Wagenheim joins me here in the studio. Mike, thanks so much. So we're hearing now Netanyahu accusing his rivals of threatening to throw him out. What more can you tell us there?
Well, this has been going on for quite some time now. We remember back to last year and his direct accusations at intra-party rival Gideon Sa'ar, saying that he was planning a coup together with President Reuven Rivlin to oust Netanyahu from power after the April elections, even if Netanyahu had won. Now, again, the talk is starting. And the talk is starting again because Avigdor Lieberman, the head of the Israel Beitenu party and the blue and white party led by Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid, saying we'll sit in a unity government, but blue and white saying we won't sit with Netanyahu. It's got to be somebody else from Likud. Well, the rumor goes that people in the Likud party are worried about going to a third election. If blue and white refuses to sit with them, if they can't form a government on their own, what do? You take Netanyahu out, you put somebody else in. That's the fear among Netanyahu and his supporters. That's why his supporters demanded that all Likud candidates sign this pledge. It's their way of saying, we've got everybody's backing. These rumors have to stop. The flip side of that is it makes him look a little bit desperate, and it makes him look a little bit like he's a bit paranoid as well. Certainly. So there are certainly two sides to that.
And September 17 elections drawing very close now, 5-ish weeks away. Tell me, what are the chances of a unity government?
It seems almost certain at this point. Listen, according to all the polls, without Yisrael Beitenu and Avigdor Lieberman, the right cannot form a government. They cannot get to 61 seats. The left isn't even close. What do? There are no other options. There's no magic solution. It appears to be a unity government between blue and white, Likud, and likely Yisrael Beitenu. The biggest question is the one we just talked about. Who is going to lead? If blue and white says we absolutely refuse to sit with Likud, if Netanyahu is still at the helm, what do then? Do you go to a third election, which the Israeli public, I don't think would stand for? Do you replace Netanyahu, or do you bring other people into the party beside Yisrael Beitenu that may be more amenable to Netanyahu serving?
And we are seeing Lieberman really as the kingmaker here. Tell me, who can we expect him to support, blue and white or Likud?
Whoever will look out for his interests more. That's what the elections are. Who's looking out for your interests? Who will give you the most? Who's going to give you the best deal in a coalition negotiation? Lieberman has come out publicly and says, I'll support Gantz or Netanyahu, whoever is first to say they want to form a unity government. That's the one I'll get behind. In reality, it's a lot more complicated than that. There are a lot of negotiations to go through, and we're a long ways away from getting to that decision.
And just briefly, can we sort of expect any surprises in the coming weeks leading up to the elections?
I don't know if there's a surprise that's really going to affect the voters' minds at this point. I don't think there's a surprise that's really going to turn the table one way or another. This person may get in trouble. This person may make a comment. This person may leave a party. In the end, it's not. The math simply says it's not going to be enough to sway the election. It looks like in some form or fashion we're heading to a unity government.
Well, never a dull moment in Israeli politics. Mike Wagenheim, thank you. Staying in the region, and a large delegation of freshman Democrats is set to arrive here in Israel today amid controversy by a number of their peers, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, the trip is sponsored by the American Israel Education Foundation, which is aligned with AIPAC, a trip that happens during every off-election year, with many of those set to touch down at Ben Gurion Airport, having never visited Israel before. Online retailing giant Amazon continues its expansion as it readies to enter the Israeli market. Now, while many consumers are celebrating, local retailers are panicking. Here's more.
Amazon, the world's largest online retailer, is set to launch in Israel in September. Local shops are preparing to open their digital stores. It's a chance many are eager to grasp.
Businesses that jump on the bandwagon and learn how to open their Amazon shops in a smart and correct manner can expose their products to 10 times the customers they are currently selling to.
Already popular amongst Israelis despite shipping costs, Amazon's expected launch in Israel has caused the stocks of local malls to drop. Retailers are preparing for the worst.
I can't tell you that I'm not worried. Of course we need to respond. We need to advance, offer more diversity. There is a shopping experience here, a fun experience. Those who don't change may stall or move backwards.
Perhaps in even more danger are small retailer businesses.
Amazon's entry will cause massive harm to a large portion of Israeli business.
business because it's added on to already inferior conditions that local retailers have. Maybe from a personal, individual, egoistic viewpoint, there's a short-term gain. If a kid buys at Amazon, okay, he's happy. Meanwhile, his father lost his job. Is he happy?
But many Israeli consumers are happy to have access to cheaper products.
The prices are very good. You get used to buying at more affordable prices. Their customer service is great.
Israeli authorities are aware that Amazon will transform the market.
I think Amazon's arrival will create a serious shakeup in Israeli retail. I think it's time for this shakeup. If Amazon dares to breach its obligations according to the Israeli law, we will respond with awareness and assertiveness.
Amazon's expansion across the globe looks unlikely to be stopped. Like any change of the magnitude expected, there will be winners and losers.
And that's all we have time for. Thanks for watching.